Hello everybody, Antonis here. In this tutorial I'll talk about distraction modeling, in particular case how to achieve this type of ruined look of the stones and rocks. So right now I'm showing a collection of assets I did for a project of mine that I never really had time to finish to make a full proper optimized ready to go game environment. Maybe I'll finish it one day later, but I just uploaded what I have to my website, and this was done in ZBrush, right? Oh, started in Maya, modeling all the floral patterns and such. And I will actually give in the description to the video. I will give a link to the tutorial that I think is really cool for modeling these floral patterns that I used, and it's applicable to any type of software. It's I think that was in my tutorial, but it's applicable to Blender or Maya's 3ds Max, whatever. So it won't really be a tutorial about how to model the patterns, but I will take a column and we will do some destruction modeling in 3D code. And what I do, I think you can do a better job in 3D code than you can do in ZBrush. This was all done in ZBrush. And I was doing it in ZBrush R7, and even in ZBrush R8 I think you can still 3D code beats it for this particular stuff. So when I started it from a photo pack, and again I'll give all the links in the description. So the Anchor Temple photo pack is really valuable, and I checked all the stuff from it. Yeah. Alright, so I got this column, and I will actually share the source files on my Gumroad for free. Again, check the description, and guys, by the way, check the description on every video I have, because sometimes I forget something and I put it in description. I forget to mention it in the video. Okay, so I got this column about an expert from Maya, about 800,000 triangles. So let's turn it to voxels, of course, and probably higher than that. 3 million is more. That's what we need. You can see when with 3 million it's still losing a bit of quality. I'll press F12 to see if I can restore. For me it's kind of alright. I say it's alright for me. Though, okay, I'm not sure why you can see at the bottom it's not 2 million, but actually let's put it to like 5 million. Okay, I'm not sure why it's not subdividing it to 4 million. It's subdivided just to 2 million triangles, and the quality is good enough. Yeah, it's pretty good. So right now what I want to do is I want to do a symmetry copy alone across these sites. So what I want to do is activate symmetry and pick from bounding box across, across Z, and let's just do symmetry copy and see what happens. Yep, did the right thing. And I'll duplicate it as a backup, so I always have these backup copies there. By the way, if you're like doing a precision modeling where if you'll bake it later, you will never move it across, right? So you always keep it in one place. But because it's just a tutorial, I'll move it around a little bit, but usually would never move it. Okay, so because I'm a bit lazy and I want to keep this tutorial a little bit shorter, I'll just cut out half of this whole thing, and I'll turn off the symmetry because I don't need it any longer for the whole video. I'll just do cut maybe even more. The whole technique will be applicable to the whole model, but I just don't want to do it that much. Right. So what I really enjoy about 3D code is that the way you model there here is quite organic and it's quite realistic in terms of, like, if I start cutting stuff, then you're chipping it over like it would happen in the real life, right? So that's, you know, it will chip over like that, and you're not really pressing with different sculpting brushes. You're doing that in a kind of organically correct way. Where you chip it here, chip it there. So I really like Voxel brush. You know, I've mastered it over the time I use 3D code. I think it's fantastic. There are a few limitations to it, like I cannot use an if I want to do like a brush stroke with Voxel, right? I cannot change alpha to anything. I mean, you change it to different alpha, it doesn't change anything, right? So you're stuck with this round alpha on Voxel for now. Hopefully they'll change it. But what you can do, you can start to unhide it, and then you can create some interesting looks that you might find useful. And I'll just, I mean, it can be a bit repetitive in terms of how it looks because you're limited to the alpha use, but still, I think those cracks are pretty cool. You know, and we'll do a couple of those. Oh, there are things that 3D code still doesn't really do great compared to ZBrush. Well, noise modifier that you have if you turn on, if you go to sculpting mode and you go to noise and apply real time, right? It'll be pretty low. You can see it's going on here, but the problem is that it doesn't remember the profiles. You cannot save the profile, and it doesn't offer you that much of flexibility as ZBrush does. So I would actually say that it's honestly almost useless. I'd rather use noise in a way you can't do it in 3D code. I'll show it using alphas, and I can achieve pretty good results rather than I'll go and try to modify these patterns, because I've tried that and I've spent a fair amount of time trying to modify a pattern. It's slow, not really effective, and I do not like it. And I've experimented quite a bit. I always try to experiment and see what I can do in 3D code, and some tools show some really great results, other tools they don't. Alright, let's do a bit of destruction here. Look at this piece. Like this particular part is just great. This chip over that's happening there is, I mean, it's really good. Just it's quite realistic. It's quite organic. And what I like in 3D code that you can replicate a lot of geological, like, rocks and stones. Sometimes for example in ZBrush you're a little bit stuck with the way you model stuff, and you can see that all ZBrush rocks, they come out quite a bit the same. You can try few different styles there, and I actually have a really extensive tutorial on the ZBrush rocks. That I think I've used a method that not everybody used before me, like not I haven't seen people using it. People use it a bit different way, and I think my way was pretty interesting. But in 3D code, because it's a voxel sculpting, you can go and do interesting modifications to your rocks. And I'm talking about rocks because essentially if you're mentioning the skull made of some particular type of rock, the way it will gonna be eroded over the years, it will be really similar to any kind of rock in nature. So if it's done of sandstone, it will be eroding in that layered patterns of the sandstone. If it's done of some, I don't know, lava rock, it will be all porous and all that. So there's quite a bit of stuff that goes into that. So in 3D code, you really have some freedom in adding those details. I'll show later some experiments that I've done before this tutorial. Alright, so I'm happy with this part. Just duplicate it. So every time you duplicate, you delete everything that's all your like box height now has been deleted. So I cannot really unhide anything. It's like while my original copy still has the box height. So right, it's like duplication and killing all the changes, like destroying the history essentially. So what I want to do is I want enough symmetry, and I want to start splitting it into parts. And this is really the biggest change, the biggest difference between 3D code and ZBrush, where you can just go and cut it freely, you know. You just won't believe it how much pain I had doing these, you know, cuts, because I actually had to create sliced meshes that would boolean out from this piece and merge it and distract all this stuff. It wasn't simple at all. It's just at the time I was doing this, guys, I wasn't really a power user of ZBrush, of 3D code, so I didn't know how to do it in 3D code at the time. And in 3D code, you just go and you cut it as you want. There you go. So I got the major cuts, and now I'll just do some cracks. And I need to press an A to switch to particular mesh. Cutting. That's not really realistic cut right now, and that one wasn't as well. So I want to do it across from like 3/4 view. And this one's actually really good. You can see that it's going here. And the thing I found, like, I don't really have those many cracks on my original sculpt in ZBrush, but because in Angkor Temple, when I was checking the stones of the temple itself, because I had 300 photos of that photo pack, they don't really crack that much. But I found that without cracking it, it doesn't really look that realistic. So I decided, like, okay, I'll just go and I crack it as much as I want, as much as I find I need to. Alright, pretty much almost finished with that. Might be even overdoing the cracks, to be honest. You don't need too many. And by the way, the results I get from here, I think are in the end better than what I get in ZBrush. They look a bit more realistic. Like here, I think it's slightly stylized. Here, for example, I think slightly stylized, a bit overdone. and here I'll get a better result. Right, so I want to destroy a little bit of the top part. I'll just do in the Vox hide unhide stain. Tin tin tin. It's a pretty cool chip. Like, but the problem is that while it's kind of cool, it can get repetitive, and because I cannot use any other alpha than the round one, so that's an issue with that. And I'm really a big fan of voxel sculpting. You know, like people will go into surface mode and try to do that, but I think that's again, it's much more physically correct to do it in voxel mode. And I'm not a fan of fake alphas, like in fake cracks, all that stuff. I've done it, of course, myself, but you can, I think, achieve a better result if you use voxel and you actually deal with the actual volume that you have without trying to fake it too much. But I mean, everyone's got his own approach, and here I'm sharing my own. Alright, then I'll just go and do a little chip overs around here. And what? Too much. Again, using Vox height quite a bit. I'm constantly pressing A to switch to the piece I need. And don't forget, you can always switch to do Vox height on all the volume sets. That's pretty fantastic. You can do this and then unhide it on all of them. That doesn't look right, so I'll just turn it off. Right, you can spend quite a bit of time doing this, especially because, well, the cut lines, they're a little bit monotonous, right? So the cracks are a little bit, they kind of have the same width across, so you want to go across quite a few of those and try to change them so they're not of the same widths across. And you can even do, you know, you can use any other brush really for those particular stuff. You can smooth it a little bit depending on the type of erosion you're trying to get. I mean, it's going away from, you know, Vox height and everything, but you add a little bit. I do major stuff with Vox height, and then I can break it apart a little bit with a few brushes, but not trying to mostly keep it organic, dealing with the real volume. Right. trying to see what I need to add, and I don't do tutorials that include like full process, like how do you sculpt, how do you then do a low poly, how do you bake it all, because honestly there's so many tutorials out there that talk about optimizing the model, and there are not that many tutorials that talk about innovative like methods of sculpting in 3D code. Some people just take like what they know about ZBrush and they try to apply it in 3D code in the way, but I think that's not the best way to go. You really want to know the software you're dealing with, and it's got like strengths and and weaknesses that you gotta consider. Right, so I'm more or less happy with this piece. Right, so what I want to do is I want to add some noise. I'll start with actually with split, and what I'll do is I'll do this is a bit of experimental thing. I'm gonna switch to a stencil, and I'll try to go through all the volumes. Okay, let's just try with a little piece with smaller dots, and like this. Let's make it bigger. Right, that's yeah, that's about it. I need it even bigger. So when it tries to do its every time it kind of splits, it uses a maximum contrast like this. So this is what essentially it's trying to push through. So if you are using it at minimum contrast, then you're not really seeing the real picture. This is what it's actually cutting through. That's why I'm not getting that many dots as I want to. Yeah, but that's about right. So I just experimented with this tool, and I like the way the type of the kind of little dots I get. Because again, I had little dots here that are made in ZBrush using one of the noise profiles, and I wanted to kind of find a way to replicate it in 3D code using its way of doing stuff. And you can use the alpha here, but I was like thinking, what if I actually do a whole split, so I have a whole bunch of little stuff going on here, like physically, again, kind of physically correct. It goes through the whole mesh. And if I press 12, I'll pretty much disappear. Pressing F12, it's smoothing out, and if it's way too small to get smooth, it will disappear. Alright, so let's do some noise. And for noise, I've tried all these voxel tools really, and what I found is extrude is pretty cool. And for extrude, I'm using some of the stencils, default stencils that I got with 3D code. Really important thing to know about is that depth should be at minimum, like 1%, like 2% the most. Otherwise, you overdo it really easily. Right, and probably, yeah, okay, let's increase it to 3%. So it's gonna be these minuscule values, really small, and oh yeah. what I do is actually I'll just decrease the opacity of the stencil, and I have to switch to every single piece to apply this noise, and it's really subtle, a bit too subtle actually. Let's do something else, like, oh yeah, this noise looks pretty good. Right, let's press to 7. Alright, 15 was strange. The other day I was doing it and I had to do the really low values to achieve anything. Yeah, okay, see now. I had a different piece selected, so that's why I didn't see any results. Yeah, you can see it now. And also I'm pressing Ctrl to subtract. You can also ask, like, oh, if I have this like crack alphas, why don't I use the crack alphas? I just don't think they're that great. I mean, you can add them for tiny cracks, that's totally fine, but for major cracks I would never use them. They just look fake. Yeah, you can see that you're starting to get this really nice natural texture that's really subtle and quite realistic. Okay, let's try this, guys. Okay, so this is actually this particular pattern, because I've seen so much of reference, it's pretty cool. It actually might happen. The only thing is that obviously it applies to the whole thing, and I wish I could have used a Vox hide to do this particular thing, so that I could unhide parts, but I cannot. Vox hide uses the maximum contrast. It won't have like these subtle bumps. What it's gonna have is it will just have like really straight lines, like pretty ugly bumps that I cannot use. To be honest, I'm quite like this particular. So again, this is this is a particular type of rock that will have this type of veins around it. But again, let's undo it and keep it to the stuff we have. Okay. A little bit of that. So here you can see it's pretty strong extrusion. I think I'm just thinking, should I keep it at that level or not? I think no, that doesn't look right. So I'll just undo, and let's see how this alpha behaves. It's actually gonna be pretty good at a low level of depth, like at 5%, 4%. Where was it? I think it was this one, probably. And this one is pretty good. So I can say, well, I was like talking that alphas are not great for major cracks. I think they're great for adding detail in where you need. And you can start by applying alphas to the whole thing, because right now you can see I have to pick every single piece and start to apply this mesh, this noise to it. It depends how you're pressed in time. Right. So later I would go to add some final bits. I would do a bit of carving and like that. I don't like this alpha. And it's not switching it properly, I don't know why. Oh yeah. Let's use a different brush. Yeah. So I'll do a little bit of this type of modification. So it feels a little bit like a adaptive brush in ZBrush. So this particular one that I use quite a bit in ZBrush. So that's for, you know, tiny breaks. The surface. Just thinking if I can have a better result. A different brush. I keep forgetting what each brush is doing. Like they're quite similar in the way they treat the mesh. So even though like use them on a daily basis, I'm like, oh, which one did they use and all that. You keep cycling them through. There's no like done deal. These brushes, you always try them because they give you a subtly different effect every time. Or now, yeah, you can see I keep forgetting that I need to switch between the objects, pressing A every time, which you don't have to worry about if you're doing again Voxel and you go through all the volumes, and you can do it differently and apply to everything. Right. So you can actually see that before that I picked a raw, I was picking alpha from stencils and I didn't apply it to my brush, and I was like puzzled, trying to understand what's going on. But it's because I had to pick a square alpha from alpha panel that I need to get, that I get a proper alpha. So square alpha is much way better than round alpha for rocks. Gives a bit more natural feel. And really just keep on going and doing this stuff all over the whole thing. And this brush is so subtle that I'm pressing Ctrl trying to do something. It's not always behaving as I want it to behave. It's picking a plane on which to do stuff. It's a bit strange because I haven't really asked it to behave like that. Alright, so this is really all my techniques to go about the destruction modeling. It keeps it pretty subtle. Just try not to overdo it. And yep. And for the end, I just wanted to show you few. I'm trying to turn off. Yeah, turn off the stencil. Wanted to show you some of my experiments. So you can see here I had I was using those stencils with really like strong extrude, and that kind of destroys the pattern. You cannot really see the pattern that's been underneath, and it's just over the top. Really, it becomes a bit like a cheap 3D model. I don't know. This is like trying with different geological stones. Like I was talking, a porous lava rock will have something like this kind of dots that go, and the cool stuff about it goes through the whole mesh. It's a physically correct porous mesh, right? And this was my kind of a winning piece that I really liked, really enjoyed. Again, doing all those things that I showed in this tutorial, doing cuts with the split tool to get all the cracks right, then adding a little few of the bumps, then a little bit of texture with the general stencils, and a bit of carving with carved brushes, all that. And that gets you a nice looking, correct looking rock. That's what realistic one. And again, it's really important to modify all the edge that you get from split tool, because if you just split it and forget about it, then it looks a little bit unrealistic. But if you do a little bit of work, cut, do some rocks hiding, it will start looking pretty cool. Alright, so I'll have these source files on my Gumroad. You can start with this model and start experimenting and doing stuff, and also check out all my experiments in the source files. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.